One player used his first check to fuel a Marvel obsession. Another broke the bank to create his dream wedding. Here's what NFL players bought with their first check. And up first, we have Aiden Hutchinson. After going second in this year's NFL draft, Hutchinson earned himself a 4-year deal worth almost $36 million, plus a signing bonus of over $23 million. Sheesh, that's a lot of cheddar. So how exactly is Hutchinson using his newfound wealth? Well, it turns out that Hutchinson is now the proud owner of a Ford Bronco. Because before the NFL draft, Hutchinson claimed his first purchase would be a Ford Bronco. Wait, hold up a second. Does anyone realize the irony behind this purchase? If we piece the puzzle together, the Lions are owned by the Ford family. Either Hutchinson knew something we didn't, or this is just one giant coincidence. Regardless, the Lions and Aiden Hutchinson are a match made in heaven. Want to know who else is a match made in heaven? Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. Because the dynamic duo came within one win of a championship this past season.
That's no excuse. We got to go out and compete every week. Got to win games, got to make the playoff.
Speaking of which, Ja'Marr Chase made a very interesting purchase with his first paycheck without ever having a choice. That's because there is a long-lasting tradition in the NFL where rookies treat the entire team to a lavish dinner. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that these meals are crazy expensive. Because feeding a bunch of 300-pound linemen isn't cheap. These meals easily surpass 4-digit prices, and in Chase's case, it ended up costing him $20,000.
I spend probably about $1,000 every game plus tax, so that round up to about $20K.
Wow, that's almost as much as Hutchinson's Ford Bronco. I sure wish I was the waiter for that meal. That's at least a $2,000 tip. While Chase burned through an absurd amount of money in one sitting, it might shock you to hear that Elijah Mitchell spent more on a night out in LA. As after Mitchell was drafted, he wanted to celebrate in style with his friends. And what better way to celebrate than a night for the ages? Only before they knew it, Mitchell and his friends had consumed 15 bottles of scotch.
15 bottles really wasn't even paying attention. We just ordering as we go.
This caused Mitchell's bill to skyrocket, which burned a $50,000 hole in his pocket. Clearly, Mitchell's friends took advantage of that kind gesture. Maybe his friends aren't as good as he thought. However, Mitchell's expensive night out isn't nearly as expensive as Ronnie Stanley's art collection. But before we dive into Stanley's art fascination, let's see how Matthew Judon and a few others spent their first paycheck. Unlike the rest of the players so far, Matthew Judon spends his money pretty ordinarily, thanks to his simple food preferences. Growing up, there was always one fast food restaurant Judon craved. Any guesses? Well, if you guessed Taco Bell, you'd be correct. Judon loves Taco Bell so much that he spent his first NFL paycheck at Taco Bell. Since then, Judon has doubled down on his Taco Bell obsession. He even introduced himself as Matthew Judon, body built by Taco Bell on Sunday Night Football. The dude can't get enough of his cheesy gordita crunch and beefy melt burrito. But Judon isn't the only player who appreciates the simple things in life. Similarly, Willie McGinnis kept the same patterns after being drafted. Despite purchasing a new house and Toyota Camry for his parents, McGinnis didn't feel any different. For someone who lived a modest life, the influx of money felt surreal. McGinnis recalls, "I was in Las Vegas with my agent and I won about $300 playing blackjack or craps. I jumped up and was ecstatic. My agent looks over at me and said, 'Dude, you just signed a multi-million-dollar contract and you didn't show any expression. Now you win a few $100s and you go berserk?' Now I see why so many people can't stay away from casinos. But you know what else people can't stay away from? This channel! Okay, maybe I exaggerated just a little, but still, subscribe! You won't regret it. Anyways, Nate Burleson also has a funny story about his first paycheck. Upon joining the NFL, Burleson learned that fitting into the NFL isn't easy. He was surrounded by millionaires who flexed their money through their high-end jewelry and abstract clothing choices. Feeling the temptation to fit in, Burleson purchased expensive-looking jewelry of his own. Don't be fooled though, his expensive-looking jewelry was fake. But it's hard to blame Burleson. My man just wanted to look the part without breaking the bank in the process. Although looking back, Burleson wishes he wasn't so frugal with his money. If he had a do-over, he would have purchased a house and fuel-efficient car instead. Believe it or not, this is exactly how Justin Jefferson spent his first paycheck, except Jefferson went all out on his first house and car purchase. Rather than keeping things modest, Jefferson went straight for a $405,000 house and a sleek black Mercedes worth $150,000.
I like cars. I like fancy cars, foreign cars. I definitely had to cop the Mercedes.
It appears Jefferson's taste off the field is as impressive as his touchdown celebrations on the field. But Jefferson is far from the only player with extravagant taste. Cue Ronnie Stanley, who has a major art obsession. From paintings of his dogs to handmade rugs and wood sculptures, Stanley has spent a ridiculous $200,000 on his art collection. I've got to admit, art is pretty awesome, but let me paint you a picture. I'll only charge you $100,000. Although somehow Stanley's art collecting isn't the most interesting thing he bought with his first paycheck. That title belongs to a different item. Keep watching to the end of the video to find out. Up next, we have Tua Tagovailoa's insane first house, which cost him a whopping $1.65 million. That's practically 4 times the price of Jefferson's house. This magnificent house contains 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and over 4,000 square feet. Inside these 4,000 square feet, you'll find a classy chandelier, pool, an electric fireplace, library den, and so much more. This house is stunning, although Tua better not become too attached to his house, because if Tua doesn't perform well this season, there's a good chance he gets traded. Yikes! However, let's not think too far ahead. Just like I'm not trying to think about the tattoo Jeremy Hill got with his first paycheck. It's one thing to get a moderate tattoo, but it's another thing to get a full-on back tattoo of LSU's football stadium. Come on, man, that's just outlandish. It's no wonder that Jeremy Hill doesn't have a girlfriend. His true love is clearly LSU. This purchase is truly bizarre. Nonetheless, the purchases are only going to get more interesting from here. Starting with Darius Leonard's wedding, which he spent over $100,000 on. All weddings are expensive, but very few weddings are that expensive. However, the price doesn't matter when you are rich and in love. According to Leonard, the money was well spent. After all, Leonard and his wife got to celebrate their magical moment at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina with tons of family and friends. Do you know who else spent nearly $100,000? Cameron Jordan. Only Cameron Jordan didn't spend that type of money on a wedding. He spent it on a watch. Because following his first round selection, Jordan decided to treat himself to a Rolex watch worth $90,000. All of a sudden, spending $100,000 on a wedding seems like a drop in the bucket. However, not all players are like Cameron Jordan. Some players took a more moderate approach when spending their first paycheck. For example, Jalen Hurts spent his first paycheck in true Philadelphian fashion by purchasing Philadelphia's infamous Philly cheesesteaks and Philadelphia gear such as bomber jackets. With purchases like these, the Eagles might have found their guy at quarterback. Alright, we've kept you waiting, so it's only fair we unveil Ronnie Stanley's most interesting purchase. The art collection was cool, but Stanley's samurai sword takes the cake. This isn't any ordinary samurai sword though. It's a $12,000 samurai sword. Jeez, that's one expensive sword. So how exactly did Stanley end up with this sword? Turns out, Stanley was on vacation in Japan when he stumbled upon a 4,500-year-old sword. The sword belonged to a working-class citizen since there was a lot of city violence in old Japan. While the citizen's identity remains a mystery, Stanley couldn't resist purchasing the ancient sword.
You had to be prepared at all times, so this was just one of those swords that, a working class citizen would.
Stanley states, "We have no idea who that guy was, his life, his story, but it's cool that we have something left behind from that long ago." This samurai sword is epic, but is it more epic than this next item? That's for you to decide. This item is none other than the Infinity Gauntlet, which Will Hernandez purchased with his first NFL paycheck. The gauntlet is made of real steel, but contains a rubber glove, so your fingers can move around in it. Pretty cool if you ask me. Owning an Infinity Gauntlet is any Marvel fan's dream. so Hernandez was ecstatic to get his hands on this collectible. However, Hernandez is also a big DC fan, hence Hernandez couldn't resist purchasing a life-size Batman action figure. The figure cost Hernandez $3,000 due to its massive height of 6'5". Imagine walking into Hernandez's house and seeing that thing, stealth mode activated. Now that's how you spend your first paycheck. And if you want to hear about other epic purchases, check out our last video to find out which NFL player owned a 500-pound reptile. So, what are you waiting for? Watch the video!